Welcome to our Q&A for part 3 of Unravelling, and this is the Q&A for our second video. So Tim, we've got a few questions for you.
Let's go for it.
So in the video, you mentioned about men and women being different.
Yeah.
But you also used the term that they're complementary.
Yeah.
And so in the Christian world, that is a word that is often tied to sort of some belief that say only men can lead, or in the church or in the home. And so we just wanted to ask, was that intentional? Is that the sort of language you were going for or not?
No, that's really helpful chance to clarify, because you're right, there is a debate, isn't there, amongst different Christians who believe that part of that difference is related to particular roles.
Yeah.
That's not what we were talking about. That's not what I was trying to talk about. So the use of the language of complementary was just that idea that although we're equal as humans, we bring something different as men and women. It's not a signal to that debate, and that debate is not one that we're interested in engaging in unravelling.
Okay.
It's good for a chance to clarify that, so thank you.
Great. So for our next question then, it says, you said that intersex conditions and gender dysphoria and the suffering or pain caused by this is a result of corporate sin.
Yeah.
How does this apply to transgender people who are not or don't consider themselves to be suffering or in any sort of pain due to their dysmorphia? Would you still say that their transgenderism is the result of the fallen world?
That's a really excellent question. And actually, as I reflect on our video of that question, I could see how we might have given the impression that all people with gender dysphoria, with a trans identity, with an intersex condition are experiencing a really intense suffering.
Yeah.
And that question helpfully points out that that's not true, is it? Actually, a large number of intersex conditions are experienced as unproblematic.
Yeah.
And a lot of people with a trans identity would say this isn't a cause of suffering for me and that sort of thing. So I think the main thing to do is just acknowledge that and say, if our conversation has given a wrong and incorrect impression, then hopefully we've clarified that that's true. I think in a Christian worldview, inevitably, trans issues are going to be connected to our theology of creation and fall. But really, that's what we want to dig into in our third video more, this kind of where's this landing? So what for this and that situation? What if there's a transgender person who becomes a Christian? And say, I'm not going to address that now.
Okay.
And I'm going to anticipate that we cover that ground in our third video.
Yeah. So tune into the third video.
Yeah. And ask it again.
Yeah.
We haven't got to it at the end of the third video. Ask it again. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the last question was, is there a real difference between the sexes that actually matter to God? Our societies believe men and women are equal and should be treated as such. What does a Christian worldview teach about that? And what does that look like in practice? Can these differences be upheld in a society that says those differences are not there?
Yes, there's a few different things in that question. If we take them one at a time, so can we say there's differences that matter to God? I think our starting point is that there must be, because God has chosen to create humanity as male and female. So whatever differences that encompasses must matter to him, because he's chosen for it to be that way. But I think what the question's getting at underneath is, there may be differences, but of what significance, really? And how do we know about that as Christians? And I think I'd want to repeat what we said a bit earlier, that most of the differences between men and women are not revealed to us through the Bible. Some basic foundational stuff is, but most of the differences between men and women are stuff that we come to know through natural revelation, through our experience of men and women, our observation, our reason, our data studies.
In our lived experience.
Our lived experience, and that we can get that wrong. We can think that certain things are different about men and women. As better research comes along, we realise that, it's not quite like that, not as different in that way, but actually we're more different in this way. And so that's the picture that I think we accept as Christians, that yes, there are differences, yes, they matter. We discover most of these through natural revelation, I think the final part of the question is, how do we sort of own that in a society that's maybe saying there aren't important differences?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that all of our society is saying that.
Okay.
You know, in fact, I struggle to think of many parts of society that are, in a really simplistic way, saying there's no differences at all between men and women. But again, I think what the question is getting at is, how do we live this out faithfully? And I think part of the answer for that is recognising that there's this massive confusion all the time between equal and the same.
Okay.
That if we're equal, we've got to be the same.
Yep.
So for men and women to be equal, they have to have the same choices, the same jobs, the same. And that's just a confusion of concepts.
Yeah.
To be equal is not to be the same necessarily, or the same in only some particular ways. Doesn't mean you have to be the same. Doesn't mean you're identical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the answer is saying equal is not the same. Equal, you can be equal and different. The Christian worldview gives us good foundations for that. Actually, lots of our culture accepts that as well. I'd say it's a fairly small section of our culture that insists that equal has to mean the same, and we can just resist that.
Great. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. For more information, go to amblecoatecc.org.uk/unravelling.